Joe.
Hey,
How are
hi.
you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm terrific. And that is a nice looking t-shirt you've got there, sir.
Oh, this. Well, thank you. It's a. I like the color, and may I say yours is quite
Yes,
complimentary as
thank
well.
you. It suits my palate as well.
It does.
Where did you get it?
Why, as a matter of fact, this is our new Everyday Night shirt with the logo on the front and
And
list of virtues and our website URL on the back. But, these are not just for us.
what? What do
Yep.
you say?
Yes, yes. It's amazing, isn't it?
It
That
is.
such a fancy shirt could be yours.
And for free.
Yes.
Well,
How?
there's a tiny cost.
Yes. And what is that?
Well, we're doing this as a promotion. We are so strapped for ideas. We're going to you to help us. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to how are we going to have them contact us, Joe?
Well,
Comment
that's
on the YouTube video.
comment on the YouTube video or on the YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be the best way to do
Okay,
that.
very good.
And uh, and
And you,
what are we asking them to comment?
we are asking them to suggest a topic for one of our discussions.
I think
Um,
that's a great idea.
we are coming up on our 100th episode, episode number 100, right? And we are planning to do the drawing and announce the winners
At the
at
end
the end of that
of the
video.
our 100th episode.
Okay, so between now and then, you send us your suggestions. If we use your suggestion, you will get one of these fabulous t-shirts, probably in black. Or if you have a color that we can easily find, give us a second choice.
And that I think this is a wonderful and terrific idea, but I don't think it goes far enough.
Well, what would you suggest, sir?
I would
I'm all
suggest
ears.
I would suggest that from everyone who comments on one of our videos between now and the 100th episode, that we randomly choose a name, and that person also gets a t-shirt.
Okay. So are we going to have them um, comment on this video that they've just watched?
They can comment on this one that's upcoming because we're
Well, they're
we're
watching it
they're
now.
watching it now. And
And this is episode 98,
90
right?
97, 98, 90. It's somewhere up in there. And
Okay.
on this one, the next one, then the 100th episode. Well, they can't because we'll
The
be
100th is where we will announce the
right. So in the
winners.
next couple of 2, 3 episodes, comment from everybody who comments. We will randomly choose someone. So the 2 t-shirts we'll be giving away.
Great. This is terrific. So you are all encouraged and invited to make that comment. Even if it's a ridiculous comment, go ahead and put it in there. You might get a shirt out of it.
Yes.
And it might not be as ridiculous as you think, or it may not even be as ridiculous as one we've already done. So,
So
so
with that, I think we will proceed to our evening's discussion. So
okay.
thank you, everybody. We'll be looking for your suggestions and your topics and your comments.
Good luck.
Yep. See you soon. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff. And
And
Joe, uh, before we even get started,
yes,
before we find an interesting and clever segue, as is our wont, I'm going to add, because we're going to need some fortification for this discussion, I think. I'm going to
yes.
ask you what you're drinking. And I
Well,
hope
I have It's a semi-transparent glass mug here. This is filled with warmed mulled wine,
Oh,
sweetened slightly with honey syrup. And it snowed today, and I've been cold all fucking day. And so I really wanted to make this. So, and
well,
how about you? What do you have?
yours is marvelously seasonal. Mine is not so much. Mine is a bourbon and ginger beer with an orange bitters. And the bourbon is, and I brought the bottle because I couldn't possibly remember all this. It's from Cleveland Distillery, 10th anniversary edition Black Reserve
Ooh,
bourbon whiskey.
okay.
So, and it's pretty light, but nice enough with a little splash of ginger beer. So, cheers.
Here's and
Carry out there.
I'll actually say, because I think it's relevant to what we're going to talk about. Here's to peace.
To peace. Peace and prosperity.
Yes, which are related.
So, all right. So, what my germ of an idea earlier today that I presented to you was the a concept of our chivalric virtues, the virtues that we talk about from a chivalric history, a chivalric tradition, derive from a warrior culture. Now we've
And civilizing the warrior culture in a lot of ways too.
certainly if you can say that we're going to limit violence so that we can continue to be violent, then sure.
Yeah, well, the I'm sorry, I'm going to stop this one. So, Jeff, I understand you had a germ of an idea.
I did. I did. I had a germ of an idea that um, since our chivalric virtues that we have sort of picked and chosen from, are derived from a warrior culture, um, and in some ways civilizing that warrior culture. Uh, and I see us almost unavoidably returning to a war. We, as Americans in particular, we are having to think about war again. When we have not for generations.
The world has been, despite the wars that have been fought, the world has been a more peaceful place in the past 100 years, although it may not seem like it because of the advent of mass media and news,
Right.
but then the thousands of years beforehand,
Right.
with constant fighting.
That's where you see my arm disappear there.
I did. Yeah, that's a good trick you do. I don't know how you did that.
But
it doesn't hurt.
We've always had global trade of one kind or another.
Yes.
But we've never really had a global economy before. So when we look at histories, it's occasionally wars of necessity. I mean, looking at how we need to conquer territory to increase resources to support our population, kind of thing. It's still an invasion, right? But at least it derives from some kind of rational need. Our people are hungry. We're going to go get food, and the only place to get it is over there. So that's where we're going to go. And it doesn't matter that other people already live there.
The war of resources.
Yeah.
Which
so
it became an excuse.
Certainly.
World War II, Lebensraum. We need living room for the German people. So it was that war of resources became an excuse.
Right. Well, it was a justification besides the Land, ein Reich, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah.
they're the manifest destiny of the German people to conquer the
Right.
world.
Yes.
Now, so that takes us directly to ideological
Yeah.
war.
That's the transition. One of the transitions to instead of a war of resources, which there are a couple kinds of wars of necessity.
Yeah.
Resources, you might say, and defense.
Well, yeah, I suppose the defense, it's the same war, right? It's just looking at it from another
A
side.
different point of view. Well,
Yeah.
and it's, what World War II from the Allies side is thought of as a war of defense, because if we don't fight them, they're going to take us over.
Right.
Right.
And
We're at,
so
right.
so we talked, or we were, before we actually started recording, we talked a little bit about what sovereignty of one's nation and one's culture and so on, and the right that a nation has to defend that. Um,
Like an individual has a right to defend themselves.
yes, yes, and defend your freedom. So
Yep.
you so you are not captured or dominated by someone else. You have a right to defend yourself against that. So nations there by extension do also, or at least we believe that sort of from a Western perspective.
Right.
So as chivalric individuals, and we want to live
Well,
in what we
you were going to mention how it changed into wars of ideology, where countries were spreading,
okay.
were waging war to spread ideology. So, but
Right. And I was going to go. I was going to
okay, okay,
take a more circuitous route to
okay,
that again,
sure, okay,
but yeah. So a war of ideology, and this is what we're talking about in this country in some ways in a, I don't know, sort of a pundit sort of way that, oh, we're heading towards civil war, we're heading towards civil war, and that war would be one of ideology.
sure,
The
yeah,
our American, our the Civil War, the American Civil War, was one of sort of both. It was an ideological war, but it was based on a economic reasoning.
well, the economy, the economic necessity,
Uh,
as the South saw it, of slavery. Free
yes,
labor is an economic resource,
right.
and
So they saw it as fighting for their livelihood,
yeah,
and justified it that way. Even though ideologically it was about being allowed to enslave other human beings.
yes,
So, well, but getting back to our chivalric virtues, what we are obliged within our views of chivalry to defend those that cannot defend themselves or are too weak to defend against a strong opponent or
mhm.
attacker, I should say, not opponent, but an attacker. So if we look at, and we all, I think, would agree that to defend our sovereignty as Americans, if someone tried to invade us, we would do whatever we could to support the effort to throw them back from our shores, from our land.
Yes, and possibly then to go further to eliminate them as a potential future threat.
Well, yes, and
But
yeah,
that's the same question often. If you think about what we talked about when we were talking about self-defense, the laws of self-defense are you can defend yourself using what force you need to defend yourself until there is no longer a threat.
right,
Once the threat is no longer a threat, you can't go beyond that point to inflict violence on them out of
right.
some sort of retribution.
Right.
Um,
If they're unconscious, you can't keep beating them. And
right.
if they
'Cause
decide to run away, you have to just let them.
they're no longer a threat.
Right.
The question when you're talking about applying that now to countries, and this was the question in the first Gulf War when Iraq invaded um, neighboring country, and the U.S. went and threw them out under the first President Bush, threw them out, and then did not pursue them into Iraq, which was criticized at the time, but was, according to the modern laws of war, that derive from the chivalric rules of war in some roundabout way.
Well, and we can also look at uh, World War One, where when Germany surrendered after at the end of the First World War, the sanctions they were put on them were designed to keep them from rising again.
Yes.
Didn't work, clearly,
Yeah.
because we had a Second World War.
Yeah. Well, and there was a second Gulf War too.
Yes, true.
But that was that, and without getting into the details of that, that was not necessary. That
No.
second Gulf War, the second, so Iraq War.
Right. So my question again is then, as citizens, if our nation, as it is supposed to be designed, follows our lead as citizens, right? We elect our leaders to reflect our values, to, ideally. um,
It'd be nice.
do we then expect them to uh, defend somebody against a bully, say? We would defend someone who's being bullied, correct? Right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about that before. So do we expect our government, our leadership, to do that globally?
I think that they're philosophically, yes. However, the challenge of doing that globally is enormous for any
Oh
one
yeah,
country, Ideally, that was something the United Nations might have taken on, but they don't. And so there have been, in cases like that, there have been coalitions of countries supporting the bullied against the bully. So in
right.
the
I mean,
case,
allies. That's what allies are, right?
right, in the case, for example, of uh, Russia's invasion of Ukraine,
Right.
uh, ideological, based on the ideology of empire, the Putin's intention to return Russia to its glory as an empire,
Well, and I mean, in fact,
presumably, but it's the United States is not the only one aiding Ukraine in
right,
this.
right, and it's that is clearly Ukraine, which is, I think, a little smaller than Texas, um, and their population is even smaller, I think, against the entire and all of Russia and
Yes,
all of its military power. So
but
that's
people
that's
perceive this as in the same way. If a bully is not stopped, they'll pick another target and another and another. And so one of the things that Putin has been said to have in mind was stopping the spread of NATO. the NATO organization, but his actions caused an increase in countries
Sure.
like the Scandinavian countries wanting to join NATO, because if any NATO country is attacked, all the others by treaty are obliged to come to their aid, which the only time that's ever been invoked was after 9/11, when
Right.
the US as a NATO country was attacked and the other countries came to our aid.
Right. And the problem there was we picked a we picked an enemy out of.
Well, yeah, we there, without getting in too deeply into it, we had the world's goodwill and
Yeah.
we fucked it up. Um, and because Afghanistan was willing to surrender bin Laden to a third party for trial, and the US, well, Bush said no.
Right.
And no, because he wanted to be a war president, because he thought that would make him more likely to be reelected. And
It worked.
then he shifted to Iraq. But those are the specifics. But it leads me to another point about one of our obligations as individuals following the chivalric virtues, and that's truth.
Yep.
Veritas. What's true, what's honest, what is factually true, what is objectively, provably true, what has data to support it. And
Well, I was going
that's
to go there too. That
yeah, go ahead.
at least our obligation, whether it's to if we have some moral obligation, even if it is only philosophical, to support the person who is being attacked unjustly or being bullied or whatever, is to find the truth of the
Yeah.
situation before acting or believing anything. You find what actually happened. Who is actually the aggressor? Who started it? Right? I mean, if you come upon some big guy in a fight with a little guy, it's easy to assume that the big guy started it. But that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So finding out the truth becomes an obligation to the chivalric person first.
There's a excuse me, I paused while I was sneezing. There was a terrific promotional video from, I don't remember if it was the Washington Post or the New York Times, and it's a video and it shows on a street scene and someone's running after someone else
Right.
from one point of view, and then it shows another point of view in a larger scene, and you can see this person was running to push them out of the way of something was falling,
Right.
to save them. And so the truth framing and your sources and language, and there's so much that goes into determining what is true and what is factual. And my second, third, fourth, I forget which career this is as an academic, is based on two things: truthfulness, determining what's factual, what you can prove, and creative thinking. And that first one seems increasingly difficult in the world we live in. Both George Orwell and Aldous Huxley wrote books about dystopian futures.
Right.
1984 and Brave New World. And Orwell in 1984 postulated that in the future the truth would be hidden. It would be, you wouldn't know what the real truth was. Orwell said instead, the truth will be out there, but it will be lost
In the
in a sea
noise.
of noise, irrelevancy, bullshit,
Right.
essentially. And I think Orwell was more correct, because the, like like the wisdom of Mr. Stevie Wonder, when you believe in things you don't understand, you suffer.
Yeah.
Superstition ain't the way, right? um and there's so many people who, and this is all across the political spectrum,
Oh
all
yeah.
across ideologies, people who believe things that are not true, people who believe what they, people who in their individuality have, and nonconformity, had conformed to the plethora of beliefs of their slice of the
Sure.
political ideological spectrum.
Right.
um
And not only that, but the I think we have been brought to a place where where ideologies um, con, must contend with each other, right? Where not only must you believe this, you must hate that.
yeah, I think
Right.
that a lot of politicians entire premise for being a candidate for office is that they hate what you hate, or
Right.
they hate who you hate. And so that's the reason to support them.
Well, we
And
see some of that. I mean, and that's certainly the way of conservative politics lately, but we can see similar things happening from leftist politics too, right?
yeah, absolutely. I see it.
So,
I see, the healing crystal emo, um, 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 navel gazing bullshit, is as irritating to me as the non-factual far right wing criticism of drag queen story hours and their,
right.
complete misunderstanding of sexuality and gender and all of that, and their misunderstanding of economy and the other, it's all over the place. And I'm, I feel like I'm here in the wilderness saying, what's true, what's real, what's fair, what's just, what follows the chivalric virtues. And that's
Right.
why I've said in the previous episode, my philosophy is ethical pragmatism, defining ethics as what's good in the social contract, which is what you've
Mhm.
espoused, for what's good for everybody, and what works, what's pragmatic, what can actually be achieved, and what will accomplish things. And it's so enormously frustrating to
Well, and
see.
the other side of that for me is we, and this is a political boondoggle of our current state, that it's not just what works, it's what harm is it? What, why is this such a problem when no one is harmed?
Yeah,
Why do you object? How can you object? How can you legislate against something that harms no one because
and
you think it's bad?
it is a, as you said, there are wars of ideology. That's
Hmm.
the political equivalent
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Just like I was
to campaign a campaign of ideology against something that doesn't harm anybody, but it's not your ideology. You want to spread your ideology. There are people, the current Speaker of the House, who is he's another one of the would-be evangelical Christian theocrats who wants to turn the United States into a Christian theocracy, falsely claiming that that's how it was founded. He's another one of those.
And the to me, that we're getting a little off here, but the idea that because the founders wanted it, we have to follow it. I mean, that's a whole
The
derivative thing. I mean,
and what the question, what is the genius of the Constitution?
that it can be amended.
Exactly.
And several of the founders wrote, well, not several, I should say two, maybe three, alluded to the idea that the Constitution may be chucked wholesale at some point as society evolves. That was it would not, it's not, that's not built into the Constitution, but it was one of the satellite writings about it in the Federalist Papers and that kind of stuff.
And I think that similarly to the differences between Orwell and Huxley, there are two theories about undermining or replacing the Constitution. One, that it could be chucked wholesale.
Right.
The other, which actually is being done, is that it can be dissected bit by bit and picked at, subverted. So you put in a Supreme Court that does not observe stare decisis, decided law, and reinterprets things, retcons the fuck out of the Constitution, and decides things based on ideology. The term culture war has been used, and there are people who are choosing up sides.
Oh, absolutely. That's
the
just
culture war. Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a third, the triumvirate of dystopian novels for me is the two that you mentioned, and also Fahrenheit 451, which isn't in the book, is not a theocratic. It's not a theocratic basis, but it's certainly a authoritarian, more like Orwell, but Orwell was, Orwell's 1984 was, you are being observed and you're being fed the state's truth, and you are observed to make sure you are continuing to regurgitate, to parrot, to believe that truth. And in Fahrenheit 451, it was more of, we are going to eliminate anything that is counter to our truth. You will not be allowed to learn anything beyond what the state says is the truth.
Right.
So,
and that's certainly the reality in some places now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's an attempt is being made in some states to eliminate, to ban books, to eliminate things that don't correspond to the perception of truth, often theological truth, of the ruling party in that state. So banning To Kill a Mockingbird, banning all sorts of, it's absurd and counterproductive. And I think our chivalric obligation individually is to oppose that kind of totalitarianism, that kind of loss of freedom, that kind of war, that kind of bullying. That's going on.
Well, and it takes us right round to truth again, where if we are obliged to learn the truth, to find the truth as best we can, we have to defend our ability to find it.
Yeah.
It- so, so I think this whole discussion has come back around to, as you pointed out earlier, that it's about finding, I think, and speaking the truth, maintaining. You defend the right by finding and disseminating the truth and justice of a situation.
Yes. One of the things that we are fighting against, and I know this as a former advertising and marketing person,
Mm-hmm.
is that the first the way the message, I mean, I always advocated in advertising telling the truth. I
Right.
said that's it's more persuasive than anything. You find an interesting, compelling, memorable way to tell the truth. That good advertising, effective advertising, is not about lying. It's about telling the truth.
Right.
But there are purveyors of falsehoods who have packaged them so attractively that the ability of a lot of people to discern what's true is affected by the pretty packaging.
Well,
There are
and
people who think reality TV shows are reality.
well, well, and some so there those are the same people I think professional wrestling is actual wrestling.
Yeah. It's physical, but it's
Really, and I
it's
mean they
scripted.
are they're performers.
Yes.
There is a certain amount of improvisation, shall we
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
that uh, having listened to some of these performers talking about their performance, the past performances, and these are mostly people who have long left that
Mhm.
profession. How uh, it's improvisation and personalities and conflicts and stuff do arise among the performers. And while there is a script that this has to end in a particular way, what happens in between
Yeah.
may not be according to a script. So
Yeah.
there it's physical and it's demanding and it's athletic, but it's not sport. It's
Right.
entertainment.
Right.
So yeah. So yeah, I think those are the same people. If you
Yeah.
if you can believe this, then you can believe that. And by the way, the Earth is flat.
There are people who believe that too.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
as Mark Twain said, a lie will travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its pants.
Right. Right.
And I remember once it was an online discussion, which is a bad forum for discussing things.
Historically, yeah.
But I said something and I cited peer-reviewed sources and, you know, very academically sound argument. And somebody said, "Oh, peer-reviewed sources, those are the worst. You can't trust those." Like, those are the standard for what you can trust.
Well,
Now, I know I've read enough peer-reviewed papers to know a lot of them take a whole paper to say essentially one thing,
right.
but they prove it,
Well, I
or
think that those people that claim that the peer-reviewed papers are the worst don't actually understand what a peer review means.
right.
They hear it and they think, oh, it's being reviewed by their peers, by people just like them, people who believe the same things they do. They don't understand how academia works
Yes.
or science works.
Well, and academia has been demonized too
Yeah.
by,
Well,
and
there are certainly some demons in academia.
well, yeah, and I having, yeah, That's another subject, higher education and the whole
Yeah.
education system is another topic, but certainly one I hear people all the time saying, you don't need a college education to have a good career. You can make a good living doing, whatever. And that's absolutely true. However, there's a value in learning to think critically.
Yes.
And that's the purpose of higher education is not job training, but it got pushed into people thinking of it that way because it became so expensive because the states withdrew support for it because they don't want highly educated people.
Right.
But yeah, we absolutely need people in the trades, but that is physically difficult work, and often very physically difficult work, and doing that for decades takes a toll on people too.
Well, and I mean, you're
So
talking about being like a pipe fitter or a carpenter or something like that. I mean, there are plenty of vocational avenues that
sure,
that
yeah,
aren't physically demanding.
right, yes,
But I get you. I mean, I take your
yeah,
point. I'm
right.
not trying to refute what you're saying.
I'm speaking in broad terms. We can go into this in another episode very in more detail and nuance, because there's a lot in that issue. But truth, what is, how do you determine what's true? I have to spend a lot of time with students explaining to them that just because they read it on the internet doesn't make it true.
Right.
What is a credible source? What is, how do you track down the sources? How do you go further? What is, people say, oh, do your research. Well, you mean look it up on the internet? That's not research. There's secondary research. You mean spend a couple $100 million building a research facility and,
Well, or
spending,
it should mean it should mean find several credible sources
yes,
and find the common ground between all of the sources, because where they don't agree, it's not likely to be absolutely objectively true.
yeah, yeah.
You need to find the common. It's research isn't just finding a paper and saying, well, there's the truth.
Or finding
No.
one that agrees with you.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. Your source. I did my research. You found a source and you read about it and you closed the book, and that was
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So you didn't do research. You found something that confirmed your bias. And
Confirmation bias, like we talked about in a
yep,
previous episode.
right. So yeah. So I think we are, again, we're wandering off. We wandered way off, but in with as often as is always the case, all of this has value. So, but I think we've gotten back around to our main obligation in these situations is to find and defend the truth, and it's going to be a case by case basis to what extent that truth needs defending. Right? I mean,
Yes, somebody said, well, and you posted this as a meme, that the truth doesn't need defending. It's like a lion, it can defend itself.
right.
And
And Redding's rebuttal. And
well,
that,
right. Yeah, a lion can be taken down by a pack of jackals.
right.
And
So,
so it is with the truth. We often see that the where somebody in a town hall meeting or something, someone would get up to speak and the pack of jackals would shout them down and not let them speak. And this is not in a free exchange of ideas. Um, the 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 guiding principle in civil discussion seems to be road rage today.
Well, I think we can have this discussion, and maybe we should. There's a we see this we can point to this phenomenon you're talking about from both sides of the political spectrum,
Yeah.
where we have, and we've said that you there is some speech that is so horrible that we can't allow it to spread.
Yes, incitement. Yeah, incitement, hate
Okay.
speech. Yeah.
So that once you allow that principle that nope, that's wrong, that's terrible, you shouldn't even be allowed to spread it. Once you allow that, you can apply it to
Yeah.
almost anything you disagree with.
Yes, and that is the danger.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a really difficult question
And it
because,
requires
and there,
critical thinking.
yes, and so there's something referred to as, um, the two examples are yelling fire in a crowded theater does not fall under protected speech. There's also something called fighting words that is, there are, and again, it's a proximate threat. Is it a threat of violence? Is it it's not simply insulting you.
Yes,
It
it is
goes
designed to
beyond,
evoke a violent response.
right, right.
And so it's not just saying, "Hey, I didn't hit him. I didn't throw the first punch. I just said something."
Yeah,
But what you said was absolutely designed to evoke strong emotion and incite violence.
like
So,
the video of the two guys in the convenience store, and the one guy used the N-word,
yep,
and the rather tall, physically strong appearing African American man smacked him in the face with a can of twisted tea
yep.
and laid him out and walked away. And um
This is the
they,
FAFO result.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And um
And there's a
there,
cowardice in the expectation there also. We've talked about this before that, well, as long as I don't throw the first punch, you know, I- I'm 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 free of consequence. I
yeah,
can say anything I want. It's a free country. It's, you know, and there, to an extent, that's kind of true. And I think that most most of the time, like the vast majority of the time, just ignoring somebody and walking away is the preferred response. But there are sometimes a case where somebody is in your face and you can't extricate yourself honorably.
yes. Or
That,
they're doing it to somebody else.
well, sure, and but then there's the strike first, strike hard, no mercy. The Cobra Kai
Well,
philosophy.
yeah. Um Wax on, wax off. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Um,
okay.
um I I think that the the what is it? The first victim of war is the truth,
Mhm.
and so um I think that I have a tendency at times, I recognize in myself, to go back, try to go back into the origins of things as far as I can to really understand how something came to happen. That's fine when you have luxury of time and a safe environment to do that.
Sure.
When you have when you're confronted with a dangerous situation, the response has to be appropriately quick.
Well, yeah. You are safer if your response is immediate, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And that's where training comes in.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So that you respond correctly under certain stimulus. Right. But so my effort for bringing this back around to finding and defending the truth was an effort to try and wrap us up.
Yes.
We found a couple of other subjects that might find their way into our episodes. But I since we are experiencing war, political conflict around the world that is drawing us in. We have rejected soundly an isolationist policy in this country.
And knowing that isolationism in a global economy and a global world is not feasible. We couldn't, we couldn't, there were countries that shut their borders during COVID and still got cases of COVID.
Sure.
There were, and with by the time we would try to do that, it was already here. So it's what our option is global cooperation.
Yes. Yeah, certainly. We have the means. We should take advantage of it, not shy away from it.
And we have avoided talking about some specific conflicts that are going on.
And that was purposeful.
Yes. And for the best at this time. If we were going to have a rational discussion in philosophical terms, as we often do.
And that's the thing is, and the reason why I was completely happy to not discuss specifics is that you have I don't have the command of the history and the specifics that you do.
Yeah.
So speaking in trying to parse right and wrong and who's at fault and who's in the right is beyond my capacity.
I don't, it's beyond your knowledge maybe at this point, but not beyond your capacity.
No, my capacity to speak on it at this moment.
To speak on it, okay.
Yeah.
But I, as many others, have not had a choice as to whether we wish to be informed about history or not.
Right.
Because history is very personal in a lot of ways, and a lot of people have experienced that as well. So that's why we didn't get into, that's another reason why not to get into specifics about it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, until next time,
be thou
a good night
and true. So this is a reminder. Thank you for watching, but don't forget to post your comments and your suggestions for our next discussions.
Yep.
You could win a t-shirt. Thank you.
Good night.